Hey everybody, Reefgrrl here. Welcome to the Point and Shoot Tuesday update for November the 6th, 2018. I have exciting news this week. Let's go look. Clownfish. The clownfish have laid eggs. I put a brief clip on Instagram and I put out a video about the snail attack, so check my channel if you haven't seen that. And yeah, so I've done a lot of reading about raising clownfish and what the potential is, and I don't have what I need to raise these babies, if I even could catch them. You need live phytoplankton, live rotifers, and live baby brine shrimp on hand ready to go as they mature. I have none of that. I could probably house them in a tank. I have filtration, but I'm going on vacation in 3 weeks and I don't expect my daughter to look after baby clownfish while I'm gone. So if these guys have started spawning, I've read that they will continue every couple of weeks, probably as long as they're healthy, happy, and well fed. So we'll see what goes on in the future. Maybe I will raise some baby clownfish. We'll have to see. I've had good luck with the mollies and I'm up for it, just not right now. Now, one thing you'll notice right away is I did not accomplish this week's task that I talked about last week, which was power heads. I wanted to clean the power heads, but with the clownfish spawning, I was reluctant to disturb them too much because that's their home. That lower power head is kind of where they live. It's their territory. So I used that as an excuse not to do it right away. The power heads are all still working. They just look a bit grubby right now. Overall, everything is doing really well. If we're talking parameters, my nitrates this week were 8. I'm calling it 8 because it was between 5 and 10 on the Salifert test. Phosphate is 0.144, and I believe that means it's time to swap out the ROAFOS from the nano tumbler reactor because it's been in there about 2 months now. Next up is alkalinity. Alkalinity has risen to 8.6. That's not too high for some people, but it's too high for me because I know how quickly it can get out of control and how difficult it is to bring it down if that happens. So my preference is to have it closer to 8. And really, I'm not stuck on a number, but what I do want is to have the alkalinity at a point where it stays the same from 1 week to the next. So if that ends up being 8.6, then so be it. If it ends up being 8.2, that's okay too. Even if it's in the 7s somewhere. I'm just looking for a couple of tests in a row that are the same number because after all, stability is what we're looking for, and that's kind of my goal here. So what I'm going to be doing is reducing the alkalinity dose by about 6 milliliters a day. Right now it's 50. I'm going to take it down to 44. So that's around 10%. And who knows, that might get me closer to my target. Next up is calcium. Calcium is 466. And if you multiply that by 3, you get 1398. Well, my magnesium was 1395. So that ratio is pretty near perfect right now. So that's parameters, and I'm satisfied that they're in the right range for things to grow and be healthy. The one thing I did do this week was remove the dead acros. See up there, all of the new real estate for potential coral. However, I'm not planning on buying any new coral until at least the new year. I want to give this tank the time it might take for it to recover fully. Once I see that things are stable enough, then I might buy some more and replace the ones that died, but we'll see. Looking down here, good news, it looks like the baby Citrus rhodactis is on the rocks now. So that's awesome because, as I said in a previous video, I would love to see this whole archway covered with those. They're very beautiful. Stanley the clam doing well as usual. One thing that's not doing so well are my Goniopora. I had 3, I'm down to this white one, which actually is quite pretty. The centers of each polyp are kind of a lime yellow color, really pretty in the blue light. This one here, you can kind of see behind Stanley there. You can kind of see there's some color, but I'm not very optimistic. I just don't think there's enough there for it to come back. I'm not gonna take it out of here, but I guess, I don't know, I'll have to wait and see. The Octospawn cousins, looking good. Buster has gotten huge. Like, I mean really huge. This isn't even as big as I have seen him spread out. So that's awesome because it means he's healthy. The red Cyphastria is growing, and I'm hoping it'll encrust down nicely on that rock. You can see the red planet. That's what's left of it. I cut off the other branches that were dead, and luckily I didn't snap this one off accidentally, so who knows, maybe it'll grow. This guy, still looking good. There's Elvis. Elvis is looking good. Speaking of Elvis, I mentioned last week about his new home, and there it is. I put a base on it using Epo Putty so that it can't get tipped over. And because it's so tall and narrow, I was concerned that if a snail came up from under it, or maybe the green wrasse decided to sleep under there, then Elvis would get tumbled out of bed one night. So it's in there being seeded, and once I move the barnacle over to the new tank, I'll bring that one up to the display. So coming over here, these guys are all looking good. The war coral has recovered from being hidden in the shade, and it's starting to grow outwards. That war coral is finally getting its red color back, so I'm really happy about that. And there we have the green bird's nest. It's filling in. There is some new tissue and polyps under here, so that's going to be a matter of time to see what happens with that. The gold torch is looking good, and you can see the Montipora right beside it to the left. It does have an area of purple in the middle. There's a lot of dead tissue around it, and when we go up here, you can see there's a lot of white areas in the orange plate. So I'm hoping they fill in again, because now the color is finally coming back. For a very long time it was just a dull brown. The Starburst Monty really didn't suffer much through any of this. The polyps didn't always come out, but there's no loss of tissue. And there's Magnus, enjoying his perch. That's where he spends most of his days. Is in and out, in and out. I don't know what exactly is wrong with it, if anything. I find it interesting that this is where my large purple torch was, and it gradually kind of died one head at a time. I don't know if that's what's happening here. If that is the case, I don't know whether it's light or flow or what the problem is. And so we've got my red mushroom. I think it thinks it's a toadstool. It's got a really long stalk, you can see there. So I don't know if it's going to get babies, but it's quite pretty. Candy canes, doing well. This purple one, splitting off into a couple of heads. And check it out, the blue-eyed blondes. They look better every day. And I'm hoping that behind that bump in the rock, maybe there are other polyps hidden. I guess we'll see. So overall, this was a good news week. I didn't have any major problems. The clownfish spawned. The corals seem to be bouncing back. Parameters are in the ranges I like them, other than the alkalinity being a little high. But I can control that now that I know what's going on in here. And yeah, oh, and one more thing. Cher, little Missy, she picks up sand in her mouth and deposits it in the toadstool. And I kept seeing sand in there and I could not figure out where it was coming from, but it's her. So maybe they're clearing out the next spot for laying eggs, I don't know. Or maybe they're just doing that to make sure there are no snails hiding. But it's actually really funny. She goes along, picks a mouthful of sand up, swims over, and dumps it in the toadstool. I haven't yet been able to get it on video, but I'll keep trying. So we'll take a look down the tank. This is one of my favorite views. So I hope you enjoyed this week's update, and fingers crossed I'll get my power heads cleaned up this week. The clownfish eggs will hatch and I'll see what that's all about, and with any luck I'll get some of that on video, and I will see you next week.
Bubbles, get it? Bubbles.